Tansei, welcome to Metis Minute, your source for Metis news in Region 7. Tansei, my name is Samantha Loney. I am your host, and today we are sitting down to discuss the topic of harvesting. A lot of you might be watching this and don't really fully understand what harvesting is. Harvesting is more than just foraging or hunting. It is an indigenous way of life. It is a way to connect to the land, to connect to our ancestors, and to feed our communities. I am far from a harvesting expert. The only time I would consider myself a harvester is a child visiting my family in Northern Ontario going berry picking. So I had to search out the expert on this subject. I sat down with Greg Garrett. Greg is president of the Georgian Bay Metis Council, but Greg is also the captain of the hunt. Now, if you don't know what harvesting is, you probably don't know what a captain of the hunt is either. So I sat down with Greg to ask him all about harvesting, its importance to Metis people, and what his role is as captain of the hunt.
I'll start off with the first question of what is a captain of the hunt. And this is right out of the harvesting policy. The captains of the hunt in each eminent region are persons who shall be responsible to implement this and all aspects of the harvesting policy, such as determining the appropriate management of the Metis harvest, and shall evaluate its progress on an ongoing basis. The third question gets into that a little bit more. So unless you have something follow up on this one, I can continue on to two.
Maybe if you wanted to, because you just explained, under the M&O what the captain of the hunt is. What is the role of the captain of the hunt? Maybe get into that and why it's important to have one.
Yes. And all Indigenous groups, I believe, have somebody administering their harvesting. So our captain of the hunts act as a direct line of communication between harvesters, the M&O, and the MNR. They help manage the annual harvest in conjunction with the province of Ontario, support the implementation of interim harvesting policy, and determine the appropriate management of the harvest in their respective regions. So that's very generic in its sense, but there is so much more that we do behind the lines. We review all the applications. We try to have one-on-one conversations with every new applicant so that they understand where they can find the harvesting policy, how to reach me if they have questions they can't find an answer to, and explain what the community piece is of community harvesting, that, it's not an individual, it's a community-held right. And that implies, the word community implies an awful lot around how we treat our elders in that. So a lot of harvesters will go out of their way to harvest extra to put in a community freezer. And all of the councils in our region share that piece. We have distributed to every council in our region, and every council in our region has fed back. So whenever there is something to give, we give it out to every pantry in the region. It's not just kept by the council catchment area. Having said that, though, there are times when our council does get a disproportionate amount simply because of the population. Okay, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and maybe explain what harvesting, because I think some people might have harvesting. Is it going out and, picking berries? Is it going out and hunting? So explain what the full harvesting maybe encompasses.
Right. So the difference between harvesting and hunting is that harvesting is living off the land, and it's our right to live off the land. We never gave up those lands. It's a natural grocery store for Métis or any Indigenous person. Whereas hunting is a recreational sport administered by the province. It draws a revenue, has limits on it, has a specific impact. But it's not just hunting, and that's the tough part for some people to gather. They think that it is very specific to hunting. They don't want to apply for a harvester's card because they don't hunt. To explain that, it allows them access into provincial parks for morels or leeks or fiddleheads or other plants that they may want. And it also allows them to fish. So again, going back to that piece about the role of the captains of the hunt and education, these are the pieces in an education sense that come up all the time.
Yeah, and so M&O citizens have the right to harvest. How does one go about obtaining, obviously you said they go and talk to you, but yeah, like what are the steps to maybe getting a harvesting card?
Yeah, so there is an application process. It's reviewed by each regional captain of the hunt and verified by to be of rights bearing by the M&O and the registry. The application process covers, the basic information of your name and address and contact information, your citizenship number, requires a regular upgrade or updated photo on renewals. It asks if you want a specific type of harvesting. Do you want all harvesting, including hunting, or do you just want the non-hunting part that allows plants and all other types of harvesting? And the reason for that is because big game harvesting, generally done through some kind of a rifle or a bow, has a very large safety piece tied to it. Mm. So in order to get that, you need to be able to prove that you are trained firearm safe. And a high capacity or high draw bow is considered a firearm under that piece. So even if you only hunt with a bow, you still need to prove that you've been trained safe with firearms, either through a hunter safety course or firearm safety course. Either one will prove that you've had training around the safety of and handling of rifles, etc.
And does the M&O, I guess, I noticed like going around on Facebook, there's been some like firearms training like that, I guess, like maybe people are made aware of, or is like there anything available through the M&O or no, just?
So regularly through the Art Council, we have looked for some ways to support our harvesters in that endeavor, because it's about $350 to take the firearms and hunter safety course over a weekend. About once or twice, sometimes we've been able to get 3 in a year where we've been able to find funding to do this. So they do the weekend course, they get their hunter safety, they get their firearm safety, they're eligible then to apply for a PAL. But the beauty of that is I get to be there and do lunch and learns on the harvesting application. So every potential harvester that takes that, I can be there and answer their questions, go through the highlights of the harvesting policy, and just make sure that they understand, you're not expected to know everything, but the two primary motivators throughout our harvesting policy is conservation and safety. And anything that's not clear in there, they can reach out to their captain of the hunt.
Yeah, and so M&O citizens, do they have the right to harvest in the Georgian Bay area? Is that considered like a historic harvesting area where they can harvest? So
Region 7, Georgian Bay and environs has been accepted by the province as one of those rights-bearing communities historically. Any M&O citizen applying for a harvesting card must be connected to that historical community and can only harvest in that traditional territory. Sometimes family lines cross-connect to more than one region, and the citizen must pick one to have a harvesting card for that region only. So I connect only to Region 7 through the Dizome and Beausoleil lines. My wife connects through 3 lines, and she can actually pick one of the 3 regions that she connects through. Either Georgian Bay, Sault Ste. Marie, or Michipicoten. But she can't have all 3. So on where you live, or where you may have hunted, or your father has hunted, or you've hunted with your father for the last generation or so, it goes much further back than that. It's the historic community, back to the 1800s. And the Drummond Islanders coming from, migrating from Drummond Island to Penetanguishene are what make Penetanguishene a Métis community.
Yeah, and are there any issues that, as like the captain of the hunt, I'm sure you get harvesters coming to you, but are there any issues that M&O harvesters are facing in the region right now?
So Just some back history. When I started about 12 years ago, I had 220 harvesters. The cap for harvesting was 1,250 throughout the province. After the cap was lifted, a little bit of a floodgate opened. I'm now over 1,800 harvesters by myself in Region 7. Approximately 50% of all the harvesters in Ontario are in Region 7. So that does lead to some problems. Mobility is always that discussion piece. But mobility around conservation. If you put that many harvesters in one area that has maybe, say, a weak moose population, you risk reducing those numbers to a critical number that they can't recover from. So mobility for the ability to control conservation might mean that, some harvesters that have property in other regions should be looked at for a limited mobility if the moose numbers in that region are high and support such a mobility. And again, there are regions that are fearful of mobility because if it's wide open, shoving 1,800 more harvesters or even a subset of that want to harvest big game could have a negative impact. It has to be controlled. Mobility certainly needs to be tested, and I've always suggested that test to be about a 3 to 5 year term, very limited as to who can have that mobility and the check marks that they would have to meet, such as do they have property up there? Are the populations of whatever they're hunting adequate for moving them? And then the cooperation of the captain of the hunt in that region, because each captain of the hunt is more aware of their region and the limitations in it themselves. So it makes sense, maybe we try something similar to a shipment letter where each captain of the hunt gets 10 of them. They can distribute them on a first come, first served basis that meets a certain criteria that we lay out beforehand. So those are some of the bigger issues facing all of the regions, but especially ours.
Perfect. Yeah, and in case anybody who might be listening or watching this that isn't Métis or isn't Indigenous and doesn't have these harvesting rights, do M&O harvesting rights affect that population, or is there anything that...
Harvesting numbers don't really have any type of a threat level to it. Most of our harvesters were harvesting, obtaining the ability to do that before the Supreme Court of Canada's Powley decision. We used the tag system of the MNR. There are new ones on board that are using the harvester cards in lieu of, but in the entire M&O harvesting, and this is going back over several years of surveys, less than 1% of big game population are harvested by our harvesters, compared to roughly 30% from recreational hunters and other predations. So, out of a healthy herd of about 100,000 moose in Ontario, for example, we might lose 30,000 of them to recreational harvesting, through M&R, etc., or from other predation, wolves, bears, whatever. But that 30% recovers every year. So it's on a very delicate balance line. The M&R has gone and done a moose project. They've redistributed how they issue tags and everything else. But consistently through that time, the Métis harvesters in Ontario are responsible for less than 1% of that population.
And you would say, like, most Métis harvesters aren't doing this for sport. It's to feed their families and to feed the community.
Some of them enjoy the hunt and the harvest just as if they were recreational, but in the long run, they've always been there for their groceries, their community. I can tell you that every year for probably, since I've come on board as president and really upped the game in our pantry, every council has benefited from big game into our freezers almost every year. And every year the Georgian Bay Métis Council has been able to do things as well. We have moose, deer, and bear. Sometimes we get the odd bit of fish donated into the community freezer. Morels one year when they were very, very populous. The last couple of years have been scarce for morels. But yeah, puffballs, every year there's a couple of them donated and they go out fairly quickly. So I believe that as we continue on and more people are educated, we will see the benefits to our community pantry programs.
Yeah, and like you were saying, any M&O citizen who's interested in harvesting or wants to learn more, you usually hold some meet and greets and some things where they can just come down and ask you more about it, right? So if they're curious or interested, they could just contact you and see if harvesting's for them.
And I don't have an office. Captains of the Hunt do not have offices within the council areas or the program areas. I have the flexibility as the president that I do have access, and that's been the shared piece of the dual roles. But for 12 years, I've been doing it all out of my house. I do educations, conversations, whatever, applications right from my house. On occasion, when we've been able to get a deer, moose, or bear, we'll do processing of it right at my home. We hang it in my garage. We sterilize everything. And then those that want to come in and learn, and I usually throw it out there for 6 to 10 people at a time because of safety issues of working with sharp objects around animals with people that have not got specific training around it. And that's a big piece of what puts food into the community freezer. So the education piece, the ability to engage, all great things.
I'd like to thank Greg for sitting down with me today and helping to explain the significance of harvesting in the Métis community. If you are in Region 7 and would like to learn more about harvesting, please contact Greg Garrett, our Captain of the Hunt. Now, each region has their own Captain of the Hunt. So if you happen to be watching this from another Métis region, please contact your council and they will get you in touch with your Captain of the Hunt. And you can learn all about how you can obtain your harvesting card. But remember, as Greg said, you can only harvest in your traditional Métis territory. Merci for watching. We'll see you down the river.